What's up, guys? 5-2 day yesterday. Could have been even better as it started out 4-0. The anti-Boston plays were a 3-0 sweep. I mean, I enjoy being right, but I don't enjoy all of my teams not doing well. The Celtics, I mean, that game didn't really matter at all. Bruins game arguably didn't really mean that much either. Although I guess it meant something more to Carolina in that one. Congratulations to Saab on the winner against me on the Houston Rockets. Houston led pretty much the whole game. They certainly were more motivated than I expected them to be, although statistically that game was a little bit odd. The Magic completely dominated from the free throw line. They got way more free throw attempts, and they were like 90-something% at the free throw line. And when you see that on a team, you don't think that team has any chance of losing the game. The whole game was based on the three-pointers, where Orlando only had like a single-digit amount of three-pointers, and I think Houston outscored them from beyond the arc by at least 24 points, by at least 8 threes. So that's something it's not totally predictable, I would say. Not really a sustainable stat. I think Houston was probably like 45% from three-point range. Something ridiculous. But whatever. And then the night finished nicely with a win on the last game to finish on the Kansas City Royals, as that looked like it wasn't going to get there. I think they were losing 3-0. They tied it, went into extra innings. When it goes into extra innings, you feel a little bit better about it if you're on the home team at least. And they were able to do it, win in 10 on a walk-off. So, hell yeah, Kansas City Royals. I might be coming against you today. We'll get to that in a minute. We do have the NBA today. The one game that I have the strongest lean on, I'm waiting around, and I'm not sure I'm actually going to wind up playing it or not. So the NBA, you're coming down to the final part of the season here. And as I always say, you got to look at motivation. You can find spots where certain teams might be motivated because, of course, they're playing to avoid playing games, playing to make the playoffs at all, playing for seeding against certain teams that have absolutely nothing to play for. Whatever the case may be, those are the types of spots you want to look for. There aren't really that many. There aren't spots that look really like that today, but then you also get these games where you have huge double-digit favorites. And in those games, I would not really want to play against the favorite for the most part in those, because usually that means you have a team that is highly motivated and is the better team against a team that probably is completely eliminated. So you do see a lot of types of games like that too. I would caution against laying the points with the Atlanta Hawks today, though, because they're coming off a double overtime win, or was it a loss? I don't even know. They played a double overtime game last night against Miami, but the Hawks are locked into the play-in spot, man. Whether it's the 9 or the 10, I mean, yeah, I think the 9 versus the 10, I think the 9 does host the game between the 9 and 10, so that matters to some extent, but they are locked into one of the play-ins at least, so the Hawks probably don't have like the strongest motivation that you could possibly find out there. And Charlotte, of course, they're completely eliminated, so they don't really have any. I mean, they have nothing to play for either, but based on their recent performance, it looks like they have not really thrown in the towel. They're just a bad team, and they're coming off kind of an ugly loss. With the game before that, I think they played pretty competitively, so I would caution against laying the points with the Atlanta Hawks, at least. Some leans in the NBA. It does look like the market is indicating pretty strongly on Orlando again. Orlando, like I said, played not well last night, but also the final score kind of looks probably worse than it actually was because of the 3-point differential in that game, which is not something that's totally sustainable. Bucks are down from a 1-point favorite to a pick 'em in that one. I hesitate to want to play Orlando on the road, but I think they could be in like a bounce back spot, and they might have a little bit more motivation here because they're still fighting for home court in the first round, whereas the Bucks basically have that sealed up at this point and have a little bit of padding, especially with that win yesterday over the Celtics, which might also put the Bucks in a letdown spot in this one. So I would lean to the Magic in that one. I lean against the Denver Nuggets as well. The Minnesota T-Wolves were getting blown out last night by the Washington Wizards. So we have a lot of back-to-backs in the NBA because almost every team played yesterday. Minnesota was getting blown out by Washington and still came back and won that game, but I think that might kind of scare them into focus. I think they obviously came in without focus at the beginning of that game, fell way behind and got smacked around and realized, oh crap, we actually have to put in some effort here to win this game against Washington. So the T-Wolves, that makes them look worse than they are and might scare them into focus a little bit. It's going to be a tough ask to have to go into Denver, but you're catching 6 points, and it does look like the T-Wolves have the market moving towards them and the cash discrepancy on them as well. So that's the way I would lean there. And the Nuggets are coming off kind of a blowout win yesterday in Utah. So they are traveling, but it is only from Utah to Denver. And they're used to playing in elevation. Of course, they are Denver. So playing back-to-back elevation games, though, for Denver, but they are pretty used to that. The game that I want to play, but we got to see what's going to happen in the market here, is I want to play on the Phoenix Suns. This is a zigzag spot, and the Clippers blew out the Suns last night in Phoenix, and the final score was not even indicative of how extreme that game was. The Clippers were without James Harden and Kawhi Leonard in that game. They did have Russell Westbrook and Paul George, I believe, and they absolutely annihilated the Suns. They were up by like 30-something points in the first, maybe even in the first quarter. They were just absolutely demolishing the Suns. The rebound discrepancy was like 60-something to 30-something. All of the field goal percentages were just total outliers, really, in favor of the Clippers, shooting ridiculous percentages where the Suns were shooting unbelievably low percentages. Like everything in that game went the Clippers' way, and it was a dominant road win for the Clippers. But the Suns are the team that's right now playing to avoid the play-in, whereas the I think the Clippers are the team. I mentioned the Bucks, but I think the Clippers are actually the team that have the padding there. They're 3 games behind Oklahoma City, so they're probably not going to be able to jump up and get one of those. They are 2 games ahead of Dallas, so they are still trying to maintain a home series in the first round, sure. But they do have a 2-game lead over Dallas, so that is a little padding, whereas Milwaukee actually only has a 1-game. I thought they had a 2-game lead as well. They only have a 1-game lead over the Knicks, but Phoenix, I think, has a little bit more to play for because they're sitting in the play-in spots right now. Only 1 game out of the 6th spot behind the New Orleans Pelicans. So Phoenix does still have a chance to avoid the play-in. So I think they are actually the more motivated team here. And because of the extreme result last night with the Clippers annihilating Phoenix in Phoenix, Phoenix is going to be the team that has all the adjustments to make here. And you got to think that you might be getting a little bit of benefit in the line here. However, the line is right now at like Phoenix minus 3.5 or something like that. And I really don't want to do that. So I think on this one, I think it actually does make sense to wait around and see if the line moves back towards the Clippers because you have Kawhi Leonard and James Harden both questionable. And it stands to see, it remains to see if they're going to play in this game. And if they do, of course, the line's going to move towards the Clippers. And then that's where I think you get value on the Suns. And it kind of becomes like a reverse injured player theory type of spot where the Clippers, like if they get those guys back, they're going to think, oh, well, we just completely destroyed the Suns on the road without those guys. So it's going to be real easy to beat them with those guys at home, right? So I think that's going to be the sentiment there. So I do like the Suns as a side in that game. It's just, we got to, I think, just wait for some more information to come in because if you like the Suns, I think the line can only move towards the Clippers there if it's announced that some of those guys are going to come back and play for the Clippers because that line, I'm pretty sure, is indicating right now at least that it's thought that they're not going to be playing, which is why the Suns would be such a heavy road favorite. But I do like the Suns there. In the NHL, very small card. The only game that I would consider playing in the NHL really would be the Edmonton-Vegas game. Vegas is the team that has the motivation there. Edmonton, they're already almost kind of locked into the 2 seed in their division. I think they have a little bit of padding there, whereas Vegas is still fighting to hold on to the last wild card. I think maybe they have like a 4 or 5 point lead for that wild card spot right now. But I think Vegas, because they're still like kind of in the playoff hunt there as far as even getting a playoff spot, I think Vegas does have a little bit of motivation there. It does look like the line has moved in that direction. And then moving to the MLB, yeah, we do have a large MLB card, but I'm just trying to kind of narrow my focus here. I do think that it looks like there is market indication with the cash discrepancy and the money line moving in the direction of Seattle against Toronto again. And I do agree with that one. I think Logan Gilbert is the better starter over Kikuchi for Toronto. I believe that I would lean to Seattle there as well. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to quite get there on that one either. I do also kind of like Cincinnati, the Reds. It looks like they've moved up a little bit on the money line. That's Wade Miley making his season debut for Milwaukee against Hunter Green. I think Green is the way better pitcher. Green is younger, has way better strikeout stuff. Miley is a junk pitcher who I've never thought was any good at all, though somehow he had like a career resurgence or whatever you want to call it last year. He actually had a pretty good season with Milwaukee last year from out of nowhere as kind of an older dude. I don't know how that even happened. Maybe the coaching just knows how to get the best out of Miley. I don't know, but I do like Cincinnati in that one. The game I'm actually going to be on, this is like a special of mine here. I'm going to play on the Houston Astros because I think you're actually getting a bargain with the team that's the better team here at Kansas City. And you're getting a team that blew the game last night and lost. Houston lost last night, of course, on the game that I was on Kansas City. I liked Kansas City as a value play with that pitching matchup yesterday, and it almost didn't get there, but it did. Houston, now, they're in a spot. I think Houston last night, they were in a spot where they were coming off 2 straight wins over Texas. So those were big wins for Houston, but now I think they're in a bounce-back spot because they came into Kansas City, blew a 3-0 lead last night, lost the game. Now I think this is the spot where they're going to refocus and bounce back, whereas Kansas City, huge win for them last night, beating the Astros in dramatic fashion in a walk-off in the bottom of the 10th. They could be in a little bit of a letdown spot now after that. That's a big win for Kansas City, beating a team that's like perennially in the playoffs, basically, in the Astros. Big win there. I believe the bullpen situation is about even as far as the rest is concerned after last night. I think Kansas City used 3 relievers in that game, and Houston used 4, something like that, or something along those lines. So I think the bullpen situation is a little bit of a wash. Probably Houston is the team that actually has the better overall bullpen, although I would have to look at the bullpen rankings really to figure that out. Actually, it looks like Houston used 5 relievers and the Royals used 4, although Houston used theirs for fewer pitches. They only used Suero, who came in and gave up the losing hit. They only used him for 2 pitches. So I think he would probably still be available today. And they only used Montero for 7 pitches. So it is possible a couple of the Astros pitchers that pitched yesterday might be available. The Royals bullpen actually threw more pitches in relief than the Astros bullpen did. So the Royals might have a few more of those relievers that pitched yesterday be like very obviously unavailable. So I think the bullpen situation is either a wash or maybe even actually a slight edge to the Houston side after last night. Situationally, as I already mentioned, I think favors Houston. And then looking at the starting pitching matchup, which again, I think maybe I've been overweighing these starting pitching matchups, and you don't want to do that. But this is like a toad special in my minute. Well, actually, I'll mention the market first because you do see Houston has moved down from -130 to -115. I don't know what the -130 was. I'm wondering if the 130 was when Framber Valdez was supposed to pitch, because I don't know how late he was scratched. Valdez was supposed to pitch, but now he's out of the starting rotation. I believe he's now on the DL for some injury. And Houston is bringing a pitcher up from the minors who's one of the bigger prospects in their organization, which is another reason why I like the Houston play in this one, because you know me about these prospects that are kind of considered to be among like the top prospects in an organization. When they come up, make their major league debut, that's what I like, man. More on that in a second, but whatever the case is, Houston has moved down from -130 to -115, but I think that's giving you a little bit of a bargain, and I don't think that was a market move that happened at like once the starting pitching matchup was announced. I think that it was the market move happened because of that. I think it just dropped down a bit because Valdez was announced out, and obviously Houston's going to be less of a favorite with an unknown guy making his major league debut in there. But that's where I think you actually come in and then you get value because the line has moved too much against Houston for that reason. Houston does have 66% of the tickets, so they are the public team. It is Houston against Kansas City, so usually that's going to be the case in a matchup like this, but they have 78% of the cash, and I just mentioned why I think the situation calls for a play on Houston and why I think the bullpen situation is at worst probably a wash. The starting pitching matchup, though, as I was just alluding to, Spencer Arrighetti. Maybe it's just because I like his Italianness. Arrighetti is pitching for Houston. He is a top prospect that they have in the organization. His minor league numbers are a little bit iffy. Like, he doesn't look like a guy who's really that overpowering, but he is considered to be a top prospect in the organization, like one of the top few in the organization. He doesn't have like a really, really fast fastball. It seems like it's in its like lower 90s, but he does mix up speeds. He's a 4-pitch guy, so I do like that aspect of it. The fact that he has a bunch of different speed changes that he can throw out there, and has a 4-pitch arsenal. So I do like that. And, of course, when it's a guy making his major league debut, he's a young guy. He obviously has to have at least decent stuff if he's touted as much as he is. But in addition to all that, he's never been seen before by the opposing hitters. So I like that, obviously. When a pitcher has never been seen before by the hitters, as I always say, it gives them an edge. I think the first time the hitters face them, they don't know what to expect. Really, it's a situation you have to see like in person to know like how to handle a specific pitcher, because it's all really like an individual thing. So I like all that. I like Arrighetti in this match. I mean, he's up against Seth Lugo, who I went against in his previous start and, of course, lost, unfortunately, where he pitched pretty well. Well, he pitched well against the White Sox, but his strikeout numbers weren't good, man. His strikeout numbers just aren't really that good. He has 7 strikeouts, 3 walks, and 12 2/3 this season. He's not a guy that comes in and just really, like, mows you down. Although I guess over his career, his strikeout numbers are actually, they're actually better than that, actually. And his career numbers are actually a little bit better than that. But his one season as a starter, or actually his 2 seasons as a starter, which I think I mentioned, 2 full seasons as a starter, basically, or 1 almost full season back in 2017 with the Mets, and then last year with San Diego, are really the 2 seasons where he actually was a starter for almost the entire time. So those seasons he did not do as well. His strikeout numbers were a little bit lower in those. His whip was a bit higher in those. So I think as a reliever, being a reliever, I think it was able to focus him more, and he was able to get more strikeouts in that role where he wasn't having to stay in the game long and throw lots of pitches. So I think he's worse as a starter. The recreational bettors might come in on this, even though it does look like the public is on Houston. It looks like they might be undervaluing Houston still and not on Houston enough, because they're going to have no idea who Arrighetti is, and they're going to look and see Seth Lugo. Well, we've heard of him. He's been in the league for a while. Yeah, he's 34. He is an old man, and you know me. I like to play these young pitchers, which makes me sound gay. Oh, I like these young guys. But no, I think the younger pitchers, like they're just more like in their prime, basically, athletically. So I like that about playing on some younger pitchers against some older pitchers as well. Lugo, and then it looks like his stats look really good this year with a .71 ERA and 1.03 whip. So recreational bettors might come in and see that and see, oh yeah, he gave up no runs in one start and 1 run in the other start. But it was against a couple of pretty anemic offenses in Minnesota and the White Sox. So those teams are not good hitting teams. So I don't know what you can really take away from that. He pitched pretty well, although, like I said, his strikeout numbers weren't impressive in either game. He only had 3 against the White Sox with 2 walks. And to put this over the top, he's now facing a really good offense in Houston. Houston's hitters are significantly better than those other 2 offenses that he faced. So this is a step up in class as far as the hitters he's facing. And oh yeah, let's look at these hitters, their history against Seth Lugo. They're 11 for 26 off of him lifetime for a .423 opponent batting average. Oh, and over 1,000 OPS, 1.154. They have 3 doubles, a home run off of him, 4 walks, and he only has 3 strikeouts against them. So his strikeout walk ratio against them is really bad. The batting average, the OPS, they have really knocked Lugo around. His stats against these Houston hitters are terrible. So I'm going to go with Arrighetti, the guy who I think has the advantage of having not been seen before, against Lugo, who I don't think is the best pitcher, but his numbers against these Houston hitters are just awful. That's going to be the only play that I have, man, as so far today right now, which is going to be on Houston. What did I say? You can get it around minus. It looks like the best you can do right now is minus 120. So I guess that's what we'll call it right now. Houston minus 120. And then going back over to the NBA real quick, because I do like Phoenix. I just wanted to get them at close to like a pick'em price or maybe even an underdog. And right now, yeah, it's still sitting at like 3.5, 4. So that one, got to see if that line comes down, if a couple of these guys are not, or if either Harden or Leonard is announced to be back in for the Clippers, then that's when I think you can maybe jump in and make a play on the Phoenix Suns. But other than that, Houston Astros minus 120. We're playing it light today, man. Have a good one. Very selective. And watch it lose. Peace.